Alrighty, 4 days left in the book of Revelation. At least that's the goal. I think it's doable, so we'll have to make a little headway today. What do we got? 20 verses, 21 verses. Yeah, we can do this. I believe in you. Hopefully, you believe in me, because I guess it kind of falls on me to get this all done. So, we've got verse 9. Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls filled with the seven last plagues came to me and talked with me, saying, Come, I will show you the bride, the Lamb's wife. And he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and showed me the great city, the holy Jerusalem, descending out of heaven from God, having the glory of God. Her light was like the most precious stone, like a jasper stone, clear and crystal. Also she had a great and high wall with 12 gates, and 12 angels at the gates, and the names written on them, which were the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel. 3 gates on the east, 3 on the north, 3 on the south, and 3 on the west. Now the wall of the city had 12 foundations, and on them were the names of the 12 apostles. And he who talked with me had a gold reed to measure the city, its gates and its walls. The city is laid out as a square. Its length is as great as its breadth. And he measured the city with a reed, 12,000 furlongs. Its length, breadth, and height are equal. There we go. So we see the city. Now, for what it's worth, I don't think it's saying the bride is the city. I think the bride is in the city. I don't know. Some people say that this is saying that the bride is Jerusalem. That wouldn't be consistent with the other references to the bride of Christ. And here it says that he's going to show him the bride, and then he brings the city. But once again, I think it's because that's where the bride of Christ is going to be dwelling, is in that city. And so, here, 1 second. I'm going to talk to Benny. Hey, buddy. Well, hey, don't worry. You get to join me now. Come here. He wants breakfast. Come here. No, you don't want to be in the video? Okay. Then you got to go. No one's getting me breakfast. It's Judah. We got to work on that kid. Anywho. All right. So there's the New Jerusalem. And we're going to see 12 gates with the names of the 12 tribes, 12 foundation stones with the names of the 12 apostles. And then you're going to see that it is 12,000 furlongs. Now, of course, 12,000 furlongs is somewhere between 13 and 1,400 stadia, which probably doesn't help most of us knowing what a stadia is. But it's about 1,500 miles. 1,500 miles each way. So to give you guys some examples, it's about the size of the moon. I don't think it has anything in relation to the moon, but the idea is the city, if you're talking length, width, and height, being that 1,500 miles, it's about the size of the moon. Now, I have some really small written notes, so I'm going to take a look and see what they say. So, I forget who's done it. I know Henry Morris, I believe, has done it, and others. But people have done math trying to guesstimate how many people have been saved over the history of the world. And they were trying to figure that out. It's fascinating math. But I believe one person did this math. If you did a 1,500 mile, so 1,500 miles cube, if 20 billion people have gone to heaven, and again, how they came up with the numbers, but that's actually, I think when you do all the math, it was not, I've seen the math, was actually kind of believable. Like, okay, 20 billion people, The earth has not always been this populated, and the percentage of people who actually turn to the Lord, we don't know exactly what that number is, but I think they had some gracious numbers in there. But if it was 20 billion people, every person would get a 75-acre cube to themselves. That's pretty impressive. Like, anyone who lives on like 5 acres knows that's a good amount of land. So now imagine you get a 5-acre cube. Well, how much on a 75-acre cube? All to yourself, 20 billion people. So this New Jerusalem, it's a big city. Now it seems again with Jesus appearing into the room, and again the stuff that we don't know all the details, but we know some. It seems as if our bodies won't be bound to the forms of travel that we're bound to now. And so you might have a place to call home, but at the same time, it might be very easy to get around from A to B. And so it's also just worth noting the length, width, and height of the city are a cube. In the tabernacle and in the temple, the Holy of Holies was always a cubed. Length, width, and height were all equal. Food for thought. Verse 17, it says, then he measured its wall 144 cubits, according to the measure of a man, that is, of an angel. The construction of its wall was of jasper, and the city was pure gold like clear glass. The foundations of the wall of the city were adorned with all kinds of precious stones. The first of the foundation was jasper, then sapphire, then chalcedony. The fourth was emerald, then sardonyx. The sixth was sardius. The seventh, chrysolite. The eighth, beryl. Ninth, topaz. 10th was chrysoprase. Chrysoprase. I need to work on pre-reading these things. The 11th, jacinth, and the 12th, amethyst. The 12 gates were 12 pearls. Each individual gate was of one pearl, and the street of the city was pure gold, like transparent glass. So, fascinating is that the new city will be transparent. The street of the city was like pure gold, like transparent glass. There's all these fascinating things about how certain gemstones, when introduced to certain lights, how they put off certain colors and all this stuff. And so people who are into gems and that kind of stuff, when they've looked at these lists of the gems listed, they just describe something that was just amazing and beautiful and just hard to imagine. Just the beauty of the city and everything that was going on in it, and just the colors and the majesty of it all. I have a little note in my Bible that the whole city will be transparent. There'll be nothing to hide in heaven. And it's a beautiful picture of not having anything to hide, not having anything to be ashamed of, not having anything that we need to be worried about, the things that we hide from others, shames, fears, protecting lies, and all of that. And 2 Corinthians 12, there's this vision of paradise in chapter 12, verses 1 to 6. And then starting in verse 7, he says, unless I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of revelations, a thorn of the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I'd rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecutions, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. That big list of things that Paul mentions, they're all things that we would have a tendency to want to hide. Hide our imperfections, hide our struggles, hide our weaknesses. We don't want to share all that. And in heaven, we'll be made perfect, and there'll be no reason to even think of hiding anything. But as we try and have a little bit of heaven now, and try and live in that way now, James 5:16 has a promise built into it, right? It says, if we confess our trespasses to one another and pray for one another, that you may be healed, and the effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Well, and that's the idea, is that if we don't confess our trespasses, our needs, our shortcomings, our fears, our failures, if we don't confess those to one another, well, then obviously we cannot pray for one another, which that leads to the third part of that. Then I guess we won't get healed. And I think transparency is something we struggle in. But then Paul talked about boasting in his weaknesses, boasting in his needs, because you can boast when you're boasting about the broken person in the arms of Jesus. Man, I've got this problem and that problem, but God's got me covered. And even when I mess up, he still forgives me. And I'm compelled and I'm drawn and I desire to do good, but I know when I'm not, he's there for me. And even if people don't forgive me, he always will. And there's a way you can rest in those weaknesses and just understand, yep, it's all about him. It's all about him. It's never about me anyway. And maybe when we're more open about that kind of stuff, other people will feel more welcomed in when they don't feel like they don't belong in the first place, and they'll be more willing to open up about that kind of stuff. One day we'll get to heaven and everything will be totally transparent. But until then, we can all work a little bit harder probably on being transparent with one another. So heaven's gonna be awesome. We'll maybe finish the chapter tomorrow. Don't know. Maybe we'll make a little way into the next section. We'll see if we make it into 22. God bless you guys. Have an amazing day. We'll be finishing up over the next 3 days and then on to Genesis next week. Take care.